Yep, just under $200 made this thing just the right amount of dumb. I love it. There comes a time in mini bike ownership where upgrades are required. Okay, fine, so they're not really required, but that's part of the fun of a mini bike. And my fat self cannot ride this thing without burning the clutch, even on the gravel driveway. But on the other hand, if we can make this BILT HARD 212cc the #1 selling 7 horsepower engine on Amazon, along with the #1 selling clutch on Amazon, and we stuff it into the #1 selling mini bike on Amazon, we might have the #1 selling combined fat person mobile device. Okay, well, I'm not fat. I'm like 185 pounds with some dad bod, okay? But seriously, that's where we're at right now. We grabbed a tape measure, and I ran the tape measure through this based on the layout of a Predator, which, I mean, come on. You can't get past the fact that this is a R10-based engine. So, based on the layout of a Predator and all the measurements, it fits with 3/8 of an inch there to spare, and about 1 inch to spare right there where that drop-down bar comes in. And that's it. That is all we have for space to work with, according to Stanley tape measure. Anyways, let's get the engine pulled out of here, which really should not be that big of an issue. This thing is really, really, really simplistic. We've got what is basically a kill tether wire with a ground right there. And we've got the throttle cable that comes into right here with a nut that you have to loosen. And the gas tank is integrated, so it's just 4 engine bolts after that, and it should come off. The question's going to be whether this throttle cable will play fair with that throttle system. And can we get the clutch assembly to line up? Let's get started.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is it not off?
I don't know.
This thing's going to be really easy to have popped off. It's almost all the way there after about 6 minutes or so. But I wanted to show a few highlights that I wish I had known. As far as the throttle is concerned, they must have put the throttle in and then decided they needed a safety feature on it, because it had this dumb thing crimped on the end of the wire that will not fit through that nut. So I had to grind down 2 sides of it and split it off of the throttle cable. The other side note here is that I thought this was interesting. That bolt makes no sense whatsoever until you stick a camera under here and see that it is an adjuster for the engine for tension. That's a pretty nifty idea. I actually really like that. Might have to borrow that idea for my racing bike, because this thing, once it ends up torquing up, has a bad habit of kicking things a little bit. Might have to steal that idea. This is the John face of Crouching Tiger Hidden What the Hell Bolt. It sucks, doesn't it? That one bolt down in behind the clutch, in behind the cover, in behind the chain. Why the hell did they put it there? I don't know.
My arm is grinding up against like 5 different types of metal.
Oh, you poor little thing. You're working on something without any rust on it in order to like half slice your hands together. And here you are crying about it.
I'm not crying about it.
Quality, job not so much. 2 engine bolts outright just loose in the rear, so I'm glad they had the 2 front ones nice and tight with the tensioner. But I also wanted to look at this. This is the clutch that's on there that, like, it outright slips without question. And I do think it's interesting that this thing is just one giant all over the place maraca. Whereas this one here, I mean, it moves a little bit, but what is up with that? I wonder if that's the reason why that was slipping so bad, and if we had replaced it with one of those, maybe it would have been better? I don't know. Is the quality of that the problem? Or the lack of CCs? You guys tell us in the comment section. Gotta admit in this one, size matters. That extra 113 CCs or so, or whatever you want to call it, I think is pretty darn noticeable, especially if we pan over the top of it. They are both pretty close to the same height, but once you get to the length and the width, yeah, there's no comparison. Actually, width-wise, okay, so yeah, there's about 1.5 inches difference. And that worries me, because what it means is if that's where the clutch end was, and this is where the clutch end is now, I'm probably going to have to flip the clutch to get the chain on the inboard side. Just realized that while shooting this video for you guys. Glad we noticed. Moment of truth. Can I use a Stanley tape measure to figure out if this will fit at least? Oh, yep, that's tight on the finger. That one hurt. Okay. Oh, stay there. Stay there, bike. Uh-oh. What are we... We are so very close, but yet so very far. The valve cover, for some reason, hits. The oil drain stud is hitting this, and if I try to lift it in order to kitty it in, we hit on the exhaust, and we hit on the air intake. So I'm pretty sure we're in one of those damned if you do, damned if you don't moments. We're getting close. We need to clock the engine just a little bit further that direction, which means that we've got to grind the plastic off right in here so that it fits into the frame here. The other thing is that to clear the valve cover, we have to have this fender move 1.5 inches or so back towards the rear tire, which really shouldn't be a problem considering the fender was already riding way out here. If we move it to here with no suspension, it's really not going to matter. On this side, if we come down, you can see the alignment coming down through in there onto the clutch. I think that's what we're going to do. We'll come back around to get a look here. One of the ideas that my friend Dan came up with was slicing this plug in half. That way we can still get a 10mm to tighten it, but it gets us just about another, I don't know, 1/4 inch worth of playroom. Otherwise than that, I think at this point, we do the plastic thing. We spray paint down through all 4 holes. We let it dry, and then we get at it with a drill. Little bit of spray paint, about 20 minutes worth of sitting, and we can clearly see exactly where the holes are in order to drill out with a 5/16. And we should be able to strap this thing down and then try and figure out the next bunch of dumb. On a side note, I think I'm going to drill the holes actually off by maybe, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch this direction. That way I can shim the clutch in and out a little bit if need be. This is curious to me. I was expecting tabs to come out, like on the Duramax side cover that looks exactly like this. But those are like the HIPAA carburetor tabs that come out. So out of curiosity, I went over and I grabbed one of my HIPAA carburetor side covers, and it does bolt right onto this perfectly fine, but you have to use the shorter style of bolts. So it will bolt up, but you gotta have the shorter style of these. There comes a point in a project where you just hit the screw it. 10% needs to be done and over with. Took a hammer to the muffler shield and managed to get it to fit. Drilled a couple of holes a little bit further back. It's actually currently using the valve cover area as kind of a hold down / pivot. So that's definitely temporary. I'm gonna forget about it is what that means. And this would not go on without slicing a ton of the backside off, which is a bad idea because then you've got heat from the muffler coming directly into the filter. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to really matter. I just wanted a cover over the top of it that's going to deflect most things away from the filter. We've got the bike just kicked off the end of the table, double checking that it freewheels fine. This is the chain that came with the clutch from Amazon, and I mean, it's not the greatest. If it's anything like the chain that we have on the Coleman for drag racing, it's gonna stretch a ton the first couple of times. So therefore, I made sure that the adjuster was as far forward before we started running this thing so that we can pull it back and tighten it up as we go. But I think at this point, we should be able to take it for a test drive. 2.3 times the horsepower, 3.1 times the amount of torque. In theory, it should now move me. The original setup would not. It would fry within 20 feet. Also, I'm going to try it because John's testing driving habits are wah-bah-bah-bah-bah, whereas mine are more wah-bah-bah-bah-bah-bah-bah-bah. Did you catch that?
Yep.
That is age and wisdom versus I don't know what you are.
So you're old?
Alright, let's try this. I bet it'll do a burnout. Want to see it do one? Alright, let's try this. Whoa, it lifted the tire. Oh, did you see the wheelie?
Yeah.
Let me try it again. John's used to riding things that are 105cc or less. He says that due to the fatness of the engine in this chassis, it's a tad bit intimidating. I mean, it is. It's kind of like stuffing a big giant V8 in a tiny little car. Oh, there it goes. Careful. Wow. Yeah, we gotta change that gear ratio. That a little scary? Yeah, we gotta change that gear ratio. Also, a thumb throttle might be better.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, maybe we'll switch that out this afternoon. Yeah, he didn't even get into like a quarter of that throttle. I think he was just idling out. Whoa! Yeah, we need a thumb throttle on it. Are you doing the I almost killed myself giggle?
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing has so much more torque. It's insane. Like, for 200 bucks, it totally animaled the thing. That was scary. I watched you do the dance. I'm gonna have to zoom the video in on it.
Yeah, when it went up, I climbed the back of the thing on the ground.
Oh, is that what saved it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I could see you coming up and down. Like, I don't think you even got like a quarter to a third throttle.
I never even got a quarter. It's scary.
It's scary? Okay. We ended up diagnosing why this thing tried to kill me and John while making this video. So if we go to full throttle, and then we let go, it doesn't return all the way. The spring that's in underneath there for the return spring, I don't know whether it's just incorrect where it's placed or what, but it actually only returns this back to about 2,300 RPM, which means that the clutch never disengages fully. What you have to do on these is you have to grab a second spring and you go from that hole there across and bend it down to this bolt here. So now if I hit my thumb throttle up here, it rebounds everything back. And this right here is what they call a zip tie governor delete, and you can do it on the BILT HARD engine. I really do recommend fully removing all the governor internals, but if you're at a racetrack and you need that extra little bit of oomph in order to beat your buddy, that right there is how you cheat the system and hope you don't blow the internals to smithereens. I would say tiny bike, big-ish engine for it, was a success. Kind of. We've got some things to work out. First of all, we got foot peg problems. That's my foot. That is my foot only fitting half of my foot on the peg. This is my foot grinding my ankle right directly against the outside of that clutch. So that's not good. In a perfect world, we would probably tone this down a bit by putting on a different rear sprocket or switching out the clutch. I haven't quite decided what to do here, because the problem is we got torque to the point that this thing is almost unsafe. We can put a thumb throttle on it, which will help a little bit, because then you'll be able to just let your thumb off and coast out. But I don't know, because if we put a smaller gear in the rear, then you'd have less torque off the line, but you'd have a higher top speed. And what we just figured out while I was cruising down through here at full throttle on this thing was that the geometry on this is not quite out far enough, and I ended up with death wobble on both of my trips down the driveway. Which means I bet it's doing faster than the 26 miles per hour that it did before, because you didn't have death wobble previously.
Yeah.
But the death wobble also could be that this thing is torquing up to the point it's lifting that and causing it to death wobble.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a damned if you do and damned if you don't scenario. We literally created every problem here, but it's cool. The other thing is we could do an extension. We could do welded tabs off of this and move the entire assembly back, because, I mean, the brakes would move simple enough because they're just regular standard pull brakes. I'd have to buy a new cable system to do the brakes if we move it back. I'm not sure. I think we created as many problems as we solved on this one. What's your 2 cents, John? What do you think?
If we can't do anything with the rear sprocket or extending it, I would definitely say having a wheelie bar.
Yep, that's true. We could just put a really wide wheelie bar off of the rear. But the whole point of this was that Jesse could drive it too. And I bet if we put a wheelie bar on it, we end up with a nope from the Jesse. And yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was supposed to be a family drivable bike, and instead it's a decide who dies that day bike. Yeah. Family. It's kind of like a minivan with a V8 and turbo in it right now. Not sure that I created the right thing for this video. Okay, that's enough babbling. I mean, we made it run. We need to make a cover for the clutch.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out what the hell to do with the foot pegs, because right now they're just plain almost unusable. The airplane flying over is screwing up the end of this video, and I just don't care because it's like 80 degrees and 98% humidity, and I'm in black and just want to be done. And you're apparently in Dino Cam black. Yeah, Dino Cam. Yep, there we go. They make a good product. We like working with them. Yeah. Along with NR Racing, which also, that's the other thing. I mean, if we extend this out so that it quits doing the dumb wheelie stuff, then we could like rattlesnake cam this thing, or we could do some 22-pound valve springs in it with like a light mod too. We could do a whole bunch of things with this really, really cheap Predator killer engine. But first we got to make it less user not so friendly. I don't know what the term I'm looking for is.
I don't know either.
A little less death trap. There we go. That's what we're after. Okay, that's good. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.